well past like 6,700.
No,
sometime next
6,700.
Yeah, sometime next year, because
either Tom Lee is crazy or we're about to make a crap ton of money, guys. He just said Bitcoin is going to continue to moon. He said small caps are going to moon. He said the stock market's going to moon. He just gave a crazy 2025 price prediction for the stock market. It's probably going to blow your mind. It blew my mind the first time that I listened to this interview too. So I'm going to play the interview with Tom Lee right now. He's going to break down what Bitcoin's going to do, what the stock market's going to do. He's going to give you a stock that he does expect to do a double. So let's dive into the interview right now, and then we're going to break it all down.
Join us now on the markets, Tom Lee, head of research at Fundstrat Global Advisors, chief investment officer at Fundstrat Capital. And the list goes on. And he's a CNBC contributor. First post-election appearance that we've had. You knew Trump was going to win.
Well,
not many people did.
Yes, that's.
I'll give you credit. Are you saying you didn't? Maybe you didn't say it in so many words, but you said it.
Yes, I'd say that we were placing a lot more weight on what the betting markets were pointing to, and so and we, when we look at all the deltas, that's.
And you saw it in the Trump trade,
yes.
And you saw it in Bitcoin,
correct,
and you saw it in sectors of the market that would benefit from.
That's right.
Presumably, but who knows from a Trump presidency? So 1,500 points a meet out of the gate. More to come, or are we're already there?
I think we need to respect this move. I mean, there was a tremendous rally post-election, and it continued yesterday. I think it really does reflect a lot of money was taken out of the market because of the uncertainty around the election. And now we know that because of policy changes and animal spirits, that this is really going to benefit things like Bitcoin and small caps and regional banks and financials. So I do think there's still a lot of upside. I mean, small caps trade at 10 times median forward earnings. I mean, that's a.
So what do you think that should be? 12 times? I mean, what's the opportunity set in your mind?
Well, since 1987, small caps traded on a median PE basis at a premium to the S&P. The S&P is at 17 times. So I think small caps could, in the next couple years, outperform by more than 100%.
So there's a lot to break down there. So let's head over to my Alpha report. I just talked about this in issue number 3 a couple days ago. We can look down here at why Trump winning actually matters. So here's the number one thing, and kind of like what Tom Lee just said, the biggest reason isn't even about Trump, it's about Kamala. All of Kamala's policies are now being unpriced. I said right here, some of the policies such as unrealized capital gains tax and just straight up raising the corporate tax rate that is now out of the picture under a Trump presidency. So the market was worried about all that stuff. The market was pricing all that stuff in, and now the market doesn't have to worry about that stuff. So now it's rallying on the back of that news right there. And actually, Trump is proposing the complete opposite. He's saying to lower the corporate tax rate to encourage more companies to come back to America so that companies can have more of a tax advantage when they come back to America versus going overseas. So just think about it. If you're going to produce a product overseas, but maybe you have to face a 100% tariff coming into America, it's really going to cost you double the price after you get it into America. But if you make the product in America, you'll get no tariff and you're going to get this big tax break. It's really going to spur the U.S. economy. It's going to add a lot of jobs to America. So that's what's being priced in. When there's more jobs, there's more money in the economy and more people are willing to go spend money. It's just like a cycle of good for the economy. So that's why the market's actually pumping a lot right now. And also Trump is viewed as pro-business and pro-stock market. So it's expected that if the market were to take a dip, if the market were to crash, Trump will accommodate the market if it does take a dip. Now, right now, I do feel like valuations are a little bit lofty. Tom Lee thinks they're maybe a little bit stretched, but not crazy stretch. So if we do get a dip, I think it would be a buying opportunity. And Tom has said this multiple times too. So let's get back to the interview. Let's break it down a little bit more.
And what do you think about some of the macro issues that I think create a different level of uncertainty? We keep talking about the bond market and what that might be saying, what you think is happening with gold. Are the bond vigilantes going to be this governor on whatever you think is going to happen in Washington?
As James Carville famously said, the bond market is, everyone's scared of the bond market. So that is something we need to watch. But we've had plenty of periods where stocks have risen with bonds rising. And I kind of agree with Powell's assessment that it's not yields have gone up not because of inflation, but because there's sort of a change in growth expectations.
I thought that a sweep was, for either party, was the death knell for the markets and frightening to all involved. And now we're getting a sweep. Why isn't it more frightening? Maybe the sweep the other way would have been a little more frightening to some.
Yeah. I think part of the reason investors are getting somewhat optimistic is that President Trump is entering office again, but this time with a lot more knowledge of how to build, a cabinet and a team, and so in some ways this would end up being more market friendly, and I think that's why investors are becoming optimistic. I mean, I kind of agree with the idea that there are animal spirits growing.
One of the biggest winners of Trump winning is actually Elon and Tesla. So I did cover that in my Alpha report also. So I said right here, why is Tesla mooning? So now it's like Trump and Elon are pretty much besties. They were just seen at the election party where it was Trump, Joe Rogan, and Elon. They're talking about a bunch of stuff. Who knows what they're actually talking about? But I'm sure it's going to be good for Elon and good for Tesla. And then I also said right here, this is welcome by the market because it is now assumed that Trump will take an easier stance on EVs. Trump has really been against electric vehicles since the beginning, but now that he's buddies with Elon, he's probably not going to be as hard on EVs as he could have been. It was feared that Trump would eliminate many of the electric vehicle tax credits, and that would make it harder for electric vehicles to compete with gas vehicles, but now it's implied that that's probably going to stay on board, so that's good for Tesla. But here's the bottom line right here. Do I feel like the move in Tesla is justified? Absolutely not. Tesla is overvalued right now in my opinion, but here's the deal. This is what I said to make the play on Tesla. If you can pass both of these tests right here, it is okay to buy. So number one, you have to be able to hold the shares for a minimum of 5 years from right now, because the market and Tesla is a little bit lofty right now. I mean, Tesla is extremely overvalued right now in my opinion. I mean, short term it's overvalued. Long term, maybe not. I mean, my 2030 price target for Tesla, you can see right here is $1,200. But I definitely think it's going to be a bumpy ride going from right now to $1,200. So we might even get like a 50 to 60% downturn in that time frame. So I said right here, you must be okay to stomach 60% swings in the share price. If you can't stomach that, you probably shouldn't be in Tesla. I have so many people coming to me saying that they want to make a play on Tesla, but they only want to hold the shares for 1 year. And I'm like, dude, you're just asking for trouble. Like, if you're going to buy Tesla, hold it for a longer term than 1 year. Try to go for at least 3 years at a minimum to try to let Robotaxi come out, put a little bit of stuff on the horizon for Optimus so we know when it's actually going to come out, so that the market could start to price that stuff in. But if you want to go for a year and then Robotaxi gets delayed, the stock is probably going to get crushed.
If we cut taxes on tips, Social Security, overtime, remove the SALT cap, extend the tax cuts, if you do all those things, that seems like
it's going to be very difficult to fix the deficit with just changes in taxes and spending. But it's probably why Bitcoin is kind of interesting here, because it's potentially a treasury reserve asset, and if Bitcoin rises in price, it actually helps offset the liabilities, which is the deficit.
So you were at 150, I think, on Bitcoin, weren't you? But
yeah.
Not necessarily by the end of this year, or?
I think 6 figures is still possible for it before the end of the year, yeah.
And then more next year and the year after?
Yeah, I think because now, post-halving and now Bitcoin's becoming a lot more relevant, and I think maybe the regulatory overhang is diminishing, that there's a lot of upside from here, yes.
Okay, S&P. End of next year?
Well, between now and year end, 5 to 10% is probably the base case, just because that's the type of rally post-election, and we have a dovish Fed and the normal seasonals.
Is that the right move right now for the Fed?
I think inflation fighting war is largely over, and the real rate is still too high. So I agree with Fed's view that we need to move towards neutral, which is towards 3%. So I think it is supportive of markets, and business investment has been constrained. So I think these things are positive.
So what about 2000? What's next year? Is that 25? They move so fast. They're like months now, the years. So what about 2025? So 5 to 10% more would put us well above.
Yeah, more than 6,000 before year end. I think at least for the foreseeable future.
No recession.
No recession, and
people want you to answer when I ask you a question. So what are you saying? 100 on the S&P?
I think well past like 6,700.
No,
sometime next year.
6,700.
Yeah, sometime next year, because
that's another 20%, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe 10, 15. Yeah, because margin debt hasn't really risen in the last 4 months, and the stock market's up. So we know investors haven't been adding risk. And now we have earnings visibility, and we have a continued dovish Fed, and then this election's behind us, so multiple tailwinds exist.
Wow. You're pretty bullish.
I think I'm pretty positive on the U.S. and fundamentals, yes.
Okay, good.
Tom Lee is super bullish on Bitcoin. He said it could hit 6 figures by the end of this year, and he thinks the S&P 500 is going to moon next year again. Personally, do I think it's going to do that? Possibly. I mean, we're a little bit overvalued right now in my opinion, but the market doesn't just have to go take a dip just because I personally think it's overvalued. I mean, I've been absolutely printing money lately, and I talk about this in my alpha report also. So the current value of my trading account is $890,000, and it started last week at $825,000. So I went from $825,000 to $890,000 in 1 week, totally printing money in that account. It's absolutely going crazy right now in the stock market. And then I did my final comments right here. So I do think that the pump in Tesla is definitely irrational. I don't recommend that you FOMO in, but if you pass the 2 tests that I talked about earlier in this video, it would be okay to buy in my opinion. I do think the market's a little bit lofty, but there still is opportunity out there. And like we talked about before again, Trump should be good for the market, at least better versus Kamala. I mean, could you imagine how bad it would be for the market if we had unrealized capital gains taxes? I mean, that would be absolutely bonkers. The market would crash. And honestly, I feel like Nancy Pelosi would pick up the phone and call Kamala and be like, hey, we're not doing this. And she'd be like, all right, I'll lay low. So I don't really think that was going to happen anyways, but that was still priced into the market. And I made a video, the one prior to this, where Jerome Powell is talking about how he feels good about the economy, and he does expect a solid 2025. So Jerome Powell expects a solid 2025. I think 2025 is going to be pretty good, and Tom Lee thinks 2025 is going to be good also. So things are pointing to a decent 2025, but I will say this. Trump has the ability to cause problems. He could put tariffs on China, and that could cause a trade war. And the last time that Trump was in office, when he started out this trade war, the market didn't like it. The market does not like uncertainty, and I get it. And when the market's a little bit lofty and you have uncertainty, the market could take a little bit of a dip, but I do feel like dips are good times to buy. So what's the key takeaway? Continue to dollar cost average into quality stocks and ETFs, and when you find undervalued companies, use stock options to magnify your gains. So if you feel like something is undervalued, go buy call options or go sell put options. I make roughly $30,000 a month selling options. If you want to learn how I do that, just go on my alpha report and click this link right here. It's going to take you straight to my website and it'll show you how I do that stuff. But if you don't want to go there, just watch the video right here. It's going to walk you through how I trade stock options. So I'll see you in that video right there.